Switzerland, a country known for its chocolate watches and jaw-dropping scenery, is hiding something even more fascinating: its groundbreaking political system. Now I know what you're thinking. Switzerland? Politics? Isn't that like watching paint dry, but with slightly more yodeling? Wrong. Swiss politics are fascinating in the same way that a completely functional, surprisingly tense watch is fascinating. It's a system so unique, so unexpectedly compelling, that it makes the political blood sport of, say, the United States look like a bunch of toddlers fighting over a juice box. So buckle up, because we're about to take a deep dive into the top 10 shocking truths about Swiss politics that will make you rethink everything you know about democracy. And frankly, if you thought democracy was already weird and complicated, just wait until you see what these guys are doing. Let's jump right in. Imagine this. You're at home, enjoying some Swiss chocolate, when suddenly, the government passes a law you hate. Maybe it's a tax on fondue or mandatory accordion lessons. In most countries, you'd be stuck with it, grumbling to your friends. But not in Switzerland. Here you have a secret weapon: the power of the people, exercised through something called a referendum. Swiss citizens don't just vote for representatives, they directly weigh in on key national issues. That's right, Swiss voters can collectively decide to tell a product to shove it. Imagine the possibilities. Referendums happen all the time in Switzerland, and the results are legally binding. So when the Swiss people speak, the government actually has to listen. It's like having a giant undo button for bad laws, and it's honestly kind of amazing. It's enough to make you wonder, why don't more countries do this? Get ready for this, because Switzerland is about to get even more confusing and interesting. Switzerland isn't just one big happy country. It's a federation of 26 mini-countries called cantons, each with its own constitution and laws. Think of it like this. Switzerland is a giant political science experiment where 26 different groups of people decided to live together but do their own thing. These cantons have an insane amount of autonomy. They can set their own taxes, design their own education systems, even decide how healthcare works within their borders. Want low taxes and a laissez-faire approach? You got it. Prefer a robust social safety net and progressive policies? They've got that too. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure version of a country, and honestly, it's kind of brilliant. Sure, it might seem chaotic at first, but this system allows for incredible diversity and regional experimentation. Plus, it prevents the kind of bitter political polarization we see in so many other countries. 26 mini-countries, all with their own laws and systems? That sounds like a recipe for utter political chaos. And you know what? You're not entirely wrong. It'd be a complete disaster. But here's the thing about the Swiss: they're like the Rain Man of political engineering. They've figured out a way to navigate this potential chaos with something called the magic formula. This magic formula is a power-sharing agreement between the 4 largest political parties in Switzerland. Instead of constantly battling for dominance, these parties have agreed to play nice and share the reins of power. This system ensures that no single party gets too powerful, and it forces everyone to work together to find compromise. It's enough to make you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the Swiss are onto something here. All right, brace yourselves, because we're about to blow your mind with this next shocking truth. Ready? Switzerland doesn't have a president. That's right, forget about all those dramatic election nights and endless campaign ads. In Switzerland, they've decided to skip all that jazz and go straight for the collective. Instead of a president, Switzerland is run by a 7-member federal council. These 7 individuals, each representing a different political party, share power and responsibility for running the country. Each year, one member of the federal council is chosen to serve as president, but this isn't some all-powerful position. The Swiss president is more like a chairperson, a first among equals. Real power in Switzerland lies with the entire federal council, not with any one individual. Ah, Switzerland, land of stunning mountains, delicious chocolate, and ruthless neutrality? Okay, that last one might not be entirely accurate, but it's not entirely wrong either. Switzerland has this whole neutral thing going on. They don't take sides in wars, they don't join military alliances, and they're always ready to offer themselves up as a neutral ground for international negotiations. But don't let that fool you into thinking Switzerland is some sort of innocent bystander in global affairs. Behind that facade of neutrality lies a country deeply involved in international diplomacy and conflict resolution. Switzerland is home to countless international organizations, from the Red Cross to the United Nations office at Geneva. They host peace talks, mediate disputes, and generally try to keep the world from imploding. Switzerland's neutrality isn't about staying out of things. It's about using their unique position to make the world a slightly less terrible place. So next time you think of Switzerland, don't just think of cheese and chocolate. So far we've established that Switzerland is basically a political science experiment gone right. But buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to crank the dial to 11 on this democracy thing. In Switzerland, voting isn't just a right, it's practically a national pastime. We're not just talking about presidential elections every 4 years. In Switzerland, they vote on everything. Want to raise the minimum wage? Put it to a vote. Think cows should be allowed to keep their horns? Referendum time? This constant stream of referendums means that Swiss citizens are engaged in the political process on a level that would make most other democracies weep with envy or exhaustion. By giving citizens a direct say in the issues that affect their lives, they create a more engaged, informed, and ultimately more democratic society. So, is Switzerland the most extreme democracy in the world? Possibly. Let's be honest, in most countries, politics is basically a synonym for shouting match. It's all about scoring points, demonizing your opponents, and clinging to power at all costs. But not in Switzerland. Here in the land of fondue and direct democracy, they've somehow managed to crack the code to political civility. The secret ingredient? Consensus. Instead of bitter partisan warfare, Swiss politics is all about finding common ground and working together. This emphasis on consensus is built into the very fabric of the Swiss political system. Remember that whole magic formula thing we talked about earlier? Well, that's just one example of how Switzerland forces its politicians to play nice. Because power is so decentralized and because no single party ever holds a majority, everyone is forced to compromise. It's a system that rewards collaboration and pragmatism over ideology and grandstanding. Maybe a little bit of bland and functional is exactly what the world needs right now. Time to switch gears and talk about something different. Switzerland's military. Switzerland's military is anything but conventional. Switzerland doesn't have a massive standing army like most other countries. Instead, they've got this whole militia thing going on. It's basically like a giant, well-armed neighborhood watch program where almost every Swiss citizen is a potential soldier. Instead of relying on a small, professional army, Switzerland has decided to arm its entire population. Not everyone in Switzerland is walking around with an assault rifle strapped to their back, but a significant portion of the population receives military training and is required to keep their weapons at home, ready to mobilize at a moment's notice. It's a system deeply rooted in Switzerland's history of neutrality and self-reliance. They've decided that the best way to deter an invasion is to make it clear that everyone, from the banker to the baker, is prepared to fight. Let's talk about immigration and voting rights, two topics that tend to get people all riled up. But this is Switzerland we're talking about, so you know they're going to handle it in a way that's both sensible and surprisingly progressive. When it comes to giving non-citizens a voice in their communities, they're actually way ahead of the curve. That's right, you heard me correctly. In Switzerland, non-citizens can vote. This isn't a nationwide policy. It's up to each individual canton to decide whether or not to extend voting rights to non-citizens. In several cantons, foreign residents who have lived in Switzerland for a certain number of years are allowed to vote in local elections. That means they get to weigh in on issues like education, transportation, and local taxes. They're treated like the valued members of the community they are, even if they haven't gone through the whole naturalization process. The Swiss recognize that people who live and work in a community, who pay taxes and contribute to society, should have a say in how that community is run, regardless of where they were born. So, we've reached the end of our whirlwind tour of Swiss politics, and I know what you're thinking. My head hurts, I'm craving chocolate, and I'm not entirely sure what I just learned, but I'm strangely intrigued. They've managed to create a political system that's both utterly unique and surprisingly effective. It's a system built on the principles of direct democracy, consensus, and a healthy dose of decentralization. While most countries seem hell-bent on centralizing power, Switzerland has gone in the opposite direction, giving more control to its cantons and its citizens. It's an experiment in self-governance on a grand scale, and so far it seems to be working. Now, I'm not saying that Switzerland's political system is perfect. No system is. But it's a refreshing alternative to the partisan gridlock and political polarization that plagues so many other democracies around the world. Whatever the lesson, one thing's clear. Switzerland is a country that punches well above its weight, both politically and in terms of delicious dairy products. Now that you know how Switzerland's political system works, you've got to ask yourself, could this work in your country? Would you want this much control in the hands of the people? Would you be willing to vote on literally everything from cow horns to nuclear power? Could you handle the pressure of living in a country where consensus and compromise are valued above all else? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more mind-blowing insights into politics from around the world, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.